Hello, I'm Learning Best Pony, and this is Reviews and Info. Today, we're going to talk about the first My Little Pony episode that I ever saw, and that is Too Many Pinkie Pies. Or, to be more specific, this is the first episode that I saw all the way through from beginning to end, as opposed to what I used to do, which is watch parts of episodes when they were on conveniently before or after another show that I wanted to watch instead. So, yes, for me, my introduction to the fandom was Too Many Pinkie Pies, one of those episodes that fans find controversial. Some fans tend to look at this as a bad episode, either because Pinkie Pie's not written well, or because of Twilight supposedly killing the clones. It can be more easily dismissed to say that it's the clones who are not written well, while Pinkie Pie actually is written well. It's the clones who are acting like mindless one-dimensional characters, while Pinkie Pie, on the other hand, is acting like a much deeper character. She goes through a personal crisis, not sure as to whether or not she really is herself or not. This leads her through a series of complex emotions. We even see that in the earlier half of the episode, the real Pinkie Pie is actually considerate to her friend's needs, and has grown beyond the childish, hyperactive thoughtlessness that her clones keep on showing. As far as the idea that Twilight is actually killing the clones, well, that all depends on whether or not you believe the clones have actual free will, or if they're just copies of the original and have only one mindset to have fun. If you're bothered by Pinkie Pie being written out of character and being cloned and executed by unicorn magic and other technical facts, then you just gotta remember, it's just a show. You should really just relax. This is a funny episode, it's an enjoyable episode, and if you just sit back and enjoy it and don't overthink it, it can really be a good episode. I don't see the point in sitting around overanalyzing this and overthinking it and ruining the enjoyable time that I've had since I first discovered this episode. The thing that made me want to keep watching the series to begin with. The one thing that I found most compelling about this episode was that in the midst of all of the craziness, there is a mystery as to which Pinkie Pie is the real Pinkie Pie, and how is the problem ultimately going to be resolved. And that's just enough suspense to keep me guessing and keep me watching to find out how this whole thing ends. Could this have been written better? Well, maybe. Perhaps the Pinkies could have gotten some kind of friendship test. Sat down with a pencil and paper and filled out a multiple choice answer question. I mean, it's clear that the intelligence of the Pinkie clones isn't exactly up to par. In fact, it was the original Pinkie who had to teach her clones the names of her friends. So, logic would follow that all of the clone Pinkies would have less knowledge than the original, and would be incapable of correctly answering questions that only the original Pinkie would know. However, the way the episode is written is a bit more humorous. The watching paint dry thing might be a bit of a silly thing to suggest, but I think it fits in with the humor of the My Little Pony series. Not the kind of test that I would try on a more realistic show, but it works in the context of a cartoon series for kids. Oh no, that is not for Bucking! As far as the cloning issue, as to whether or not it is moral to kill clones or not, as to whether or not clones have a free will, whether or not they deserve a life all of their own, or whether they are just mindless copies that only know one thing and are out to destroy and cause havoc and be a danger, and they must be eliminated no matter what. Well, It's an issue that's been touched on before in a lot of other series, such as Star Wars, Gravity Falls, Dexter's Lab, and a couple of episodes of different Star Trek shows, among others. Now, since we don't have Captain Picard here to tell us the measure of a pony, I'm going to have to leave it up to the people in the comments to discuss through commenting or through video response. Tell me what you think about the issue of clones and free will, especially as it applies to this particular situation, versus what unfolded in the series I mentioned in that list, or ones that you've seen the same plot done elsewhere. When a TV series does a cloning episode, should those clones be given separate jobs and free will and a life all of their own? Or should they just be eliminated before the problem snowballs and gets too big? What would Ponyville have been like if Pinkie had her clones go across the whole of Equestria and pick up other jobs and do other things? Would Equestria have survived hundreds and thousands of Pinkie Pies? Or would this have been far less of a problem if she had stopped at a manageable number of only, say, 4 or 5? The one downside to Too Many Pinkie Pies that I have, and it's a point that keeps coming up all the time, is that since this was my first episode after getting off of fan-made productions, I was still learning the names of the ponies. I was calling Fluttershy Shutterfly. I was calling Apple Bloom Peach Blossom. I was calling Rarity the Marshmallow one. The only ponies whose names I knew were Rainbow Dash and Twilight Sparkle, because of how strongly they were represented in the fandom. In the case of Applejack, it was Too Many Pinkie Pies that messed me up on her name, and I spent months calling either her or Big Mac by the name Apple John. Thanks a lot, Pinkie Pie episode. But honestly, that's really my only complaint about this. The random antics of all of the Pinkie clones, the normal day impossible antics of the real Pinkie Pie, and even that Generation 3 can you make a face crazier than this, Pinkie. Those were some of the highlights of the episode for me, and was some of what really made this a truly funny experience. It's because this episode was so enjoyable that I went out and decided to watch more and more. The next episode that I watched in this series was Swarm of the Century, which I watched with absolutely no idea that it wasn't part of Season 3. I think that's how a person can get hooked on this series, is to give them a few laughs and make them come back for more. Whether or not some pony is in character or not is not something that a first-time viewer is aware of. And whether or not the clones had a right to exist is a debate that is best saved for another video. In short, Too Many Pinkie Pies was an episode that made me laugh and reassured me that even though this was a series about ponies, they could still be just as enjoyable and relatable as a series about humans. It was just enough to make me want to keep watching the series again and again, and hook me in a lot more efficiently than Pound Puppies or Littlest Pet Shop or something along those lines. Next, we'll be talking about another episode that I found enjoyable. This is one that, even though it has a strong writing flaw, it's still loved by a great deal of the community, and it played out almost identically to one of my other favorite episodes from another one of my favorite TV series. So, when we come back, we'll be discussing Swarm of the Century. Until then, thank you for watching, and good night. What part of this was a good idea? Why didn't I clone Fluttershy instead? Now it's interesting, but how did it clone the hat too? Huh.